Hey everyone, there's a story I want to walk you through today because on the surface it looked like something you have seen 100 times. Billionaire leaves New York for Florida. Rich guy, sunshine, lower taxes, standard headline. But what we're actually watching here is a real time structural collapse in municipal finance wrapped inside what looks like a routine tax flight story. And the reason this one is different, the reason it stopped me is that his stated reason for leaving has nothing to do with taxes at all. And that's actually more damning than if it were. The man's name is Larry Robbins. He runs Glenview Capital Management, a $5.6 billion in assets, 24 years in New York, chairman of the Robbins Foundation, the city's most prominent anti-poverty charity. Gave millions to charter school, 2 decades of documented genuine commitment to the city's most vulnerable people. In 2024, he moved his family to the Florida. There's one number buried in the story that reframes everything. I will get to it. But by the end of this, you will see this is not a story about taxes or politics. It's about a city losing the civic infrastructure it depends on. And the most damning evidence is that even the people who spent years trying to hold that infrastructure together are quietly walking away. Let's get into it. April 10, 2024. Bloomberg publishes an interview with Robbins following a disclosure to his investors. He's moving his wife and 3 children, aged 8, 5, and 2 respectively, to Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. His 53 employees are not being asked to follow. The Manhattan office at 767 Fifth Avenue stays open. He will commute back 3 days a week. When asked why, he doesn't mention taxes. He talks about his kids' school, about getting them settled before its root deepens, about lifestyle, and then he says something that I think is the most quietly devastating line in this whole story. He says, I am in fear for New York's most vulnerable to become victimized by great migration. This man is announcing his leaving, in the same breath expressing genuine grief about what that means for the city poor. Read that again and think about what it actually says. To understand why that matters, you need to know who Robbins actually is. He grew up in middle class Chicago, started playing hockey at the age of 5 in a town called Glenview. Yes, that's where the fun name comes from. Goes to the goes to Penn, gets dual degrees in economics and engineering, spent years under legendary investor Leon Cooperman at the Omega Advisors, and in 2000 launches Glenview Capital in Manhattan. For the next decade, 301% cumulative net returns through dot-com crashes and everything else. 2008 hits and cuts the fund roughly in half. He doesn't close it, he rebuilds. Then in 2013, he executes a highly concentrated contrarian position in healthcare providers, anticipating the legislative rollout of Affordable Care Act at a time when most people thought that was a losing trade. That asymmetric bet generated 84% net return, one of the best single year performance in the industry that year. But the moment that tells you most about his character is 2015, a rough year, fund down over 13%. And instead of blaming macro conditions or the Fed, he writes his investors and says simply, I failed to protect your capital. He waives his management fees, creates a new fund to make them whole. No excuses, just accountability. This is not someone who cuts and runs, which is exactly why his moves mean something because he's not alone. He said in that Bloomberg interview that he's probably the last hedge fund manager to move to Florida. He was not joking. Ken Griffin moved Citadel, $69 billion in assets from Chicago to Miami in 2022, and is now building a landmark office tower in Brickell. Paul Singer relocated major Elliott management operations to West Palm Beach. Scott from Tiger Global purchased a $132 million home in Palm Beach. Carr left New York in 2019. Cathy would move ARK investments to Florida. Paul Tudor Jones, also a Robin Hood board member. Alongside Robbins, moved to Florida, so did many others. Palm Beach County alone now hosts over 300 hedge fund and financial firms. Connecticut, for decades, the pressure valve for finance professionals escaping New York City taxes has fallen behind Florida in assets under management. From 2020 to 2023, over 370 investment management firms relocated from New York or California. By 2024, Texas officially surpassed New York in financial services employment. This stopped being a trend a while ago. What we are watching is a permanent reallocation of economic gravity, and it has a destination. Now, here's that number. Look at the fiscal concentration risk. New York City's top 1% of the earner fund roughly half of the entire city income tax, half, and 1% of people. And in 2019, that figure was 40%. So the concentration has actually increased even as wealthy residents leave. The tax base is not just shrinking, it's become dangerously narrow at exactly the moment the people holding it up are deciding to go. For the last decade, New York has lost a dollar 101 billion in adjusted gross income throughout migrations. Florida absorbed a dollar 196 billion in incoming AGI over that same period. That number, 196 billion, is larger than New York City entire annual budget. This is not wealthy people chasing better weather. It's a sustained decade-long reallocation of economic weight, leaving a $7 billion structural deficit in its wake. Think about what that actually means for people who can't leave. And that's who I want to make this real for. There's a guy, call him Marcus, runs a small restaurant near Midtown office building, built his entire business on weekday foot traffic. Post-pandemic, the workers came back, but 3 days a week instead of 5. Lower Manhattan office vacancy hit 24.4% in late 2024. Nearly a quarter of all commercial space sitting empty. Marcus doesn't read hedge fund filings. He doesn't know who Larry Robbins is, but he's experiencing the downstream effects of capital flight directly. When commercial density drops, the velocity of money in that local economy slows. Its profit margins are a direct derivative of how many high earning professionals are walking past his door. When that base thins out, the collateral damage hits small businesses first and hardest. Multiply Marcus by thousands of owners across Manhattan, and you start to see the full shape of what's actually happening at a street level. So, what's the policy response? This is genuinely hard to watch. In 2022, the governor told critics at a campaign rally, quoting directly, just jump on a bus and head down to Florida where you belong. Get out of town. You don't represent our values. And by March 2026, same governor, but different reality. He says, I need people who are high net worth to support the generous social programs we want to have. Maybe the first step should be go down to Palm Beach and see who we can bring back home because our tax base has been eroded. 4 years, get out to police, come back. This is not a policy evolution. It's a negative feedback loop arriving right on schedule. When a jurisdiction with a combined top marginal tax rate of nearly 14.8% competes against a 0% state, the math is unforgiving. You can't fund a progressive social infrastructure by simultaneously demonizing and depending on a highly mobile tax base. That's not our ideology. That's just how incentives work. And this is not only a New York story. Chicago lost Ken Griffin, who cited crime and taxes explicitly when he left. California and New York combined lost 373,000 residents and $23.5 billion in adjusted gross income in a single year. San Francisco tax exodus to Texas is structurally identical to what's happening here. Any city running its public finances on a hyper concentrated base of high earners while making itself progressively more expensive is watching New York right now. Some of the warning, some already living it. So let's come back to where we started. Larry Robbins, chairman of New York, biggest anti-poverty charity, gave millions to fix its schools. When his fund stumbled, he took personal responsibility and stated that person looked at New York in 2024 and decided his children should grow up somewhere else. The fact that it wasn't about taxes is the more troubling finding. What made New York schools need a Robin Hood foundation in the first place? Chronic underfunding. Then what drives underfunding? Shrinking tax base. Then what shrinks the tax base? Out migration of exact people whose capital the whole system depends on. Robbins spent years writing checks to patch the hole. His leaving makes the hole larger. That's not irony. It's just What happens when good intentions meet broken incentives? Nobody fixes the incentive. This is not about left or right. It's about whether the numbers work. Right now, in New York, they don't. Is this a localized fiscal crisis or the blueprint for the next decade of American urban decay? I genuinely want you to read on that in the comments. Like the video, subscribe for more kind of this analysis, and I will see you in the next one.